Welcome to the masterclass that will help you elevate your motorcycling content and hopefully win the Eurogrip Creator Circuit of the Year, in which you stand to win up to 5 lakh rupees and get awarded by the Thala himself, MS Dhoni.
Why are you creating motorcycle content? Before we talk about cameras, angles, or edits, this is the first question you need to ask yourself. Why are you really in the game? Do you genuinely love riding motorcycles? The sound, the movement, the solitude, the chaos? Or were you influenced by someone online, someone who made it look cool, cinematic, aspirational? And you thought, maybe I can do that too. There is no right or wrong answer here, but there is an honest one. Because when you create content around something you truly enjoy, it never feels like work. But when you are forcing content just to keep up, chasing trends, chasing numbers, writing starts to feel like a chore. And that's where the fun quietly disappears. The second question is just as important. What are your creative strengths outside of motorcycles? Photography, music, writing, design? Because great motorcycle content is rarely just about riding. It is about how your other creative instincts come together. A musician hears things differently. A photographer sees frames before they exist. And when you're creating solo, these skills just don't help. They elevate everything you make. My name is Sunny, also known as the Motographer. I've been writing and creating motorcycle content since 2002. I started with a Pulsar 180 and a second-hand 1.3 megapixel camera. That journey grew into India's largest motorcycle community and later a print magazine too. Since then, motorcycles have taken me across more than 80 countries. The one thing that remains a constant is my eye for photography and my background in design. The masterclass comes from everything I have learned along the way, with one clear aim: to help you create better motorcycle content without losing your love for riding and hopefully helping you win the Eurogrip Creators Contest. Let's talk about types of motorcycle content. Motorcycling is all about being one with nature and exploring new places. However, it is not as simple in today's scenario. If you just like motorcycles and not really ride too much, but for some reason you still want to become a motorcycle content creator, then there are a few formats you may want to consider. First one is informative or technical content. This usually happens in a home studio, a garage, or a simple setup with good light and clean audio. Here, focus is clarity. Explaining systems, parts, riding techniques, or comparisons, often supported by images, diagrams, or footage sourced from the internet. It is not about motion, it is about understanding. Another format is first person touring or vlogging content. The camera becomes your eyes, the ride is your story. This style relies heavily on presence, talking to the camera, reacting in real time, talking to the viewer with you movement by movement, explaining what is going on. That is what a vlog is, a video vlog. It's raw, immediate, and personal. And then there's cinematic storytelling, usually long form YouTube videos, and short cinematic reels that capture fragments of a journey. This format isn't about constant talking, it is about mood, rhythm, and visual storytelling. Letting the road, the places, and the ride speak for themselves. You can also create content around specific motorcycle genres: preparing for a race, training for a rally, track days, off road experiences, or riding with a large group. Each of these demand a different kind of approach, different logistics, different storytelling, and often a team instead of just one person. Even when touring, the thought process changes completely if you're riding solo with one other rider or as part of a big group. The camera choices change, the story changes, the edit changes. Another format can be interviewing motorcyclists that will give you an upper hand in terms of creating a stage. This works well if you want to gain followers and use the interviewees network because obviously they will share it. For this masterclass, I'm deliberately narrowing the focus to solo riding because the way I create and the way I've created for years is as a solo cinematic content creator on the road. One rider, one motorcycle, minimal gadgets for maximum impact. And if you can learn to tell compelling story in that format, you can adapt to those principles to almost any other kind of motorcycle content. Now let's get to packing your stuff. Packing for a solo ride can be confusing. It is very easy to get overwhelmed and end up carrying far more than you actually need. This is something I've learned after hundreds of thousands of kilometers and hundreds of solo rides around the world. The less you carry, the more effectively you can use it. There's a saying, the best camera in the world is in your pocket. And today, that camera can be just your phone. You can create incredible motorcycle content by just using a phone and nothing else. I do carry larger cameras, but that also means extra weight and extra responsibility. So the way I pack becomes even more important. Everything I use fits in two places. One small backpack and one tank bag. The backpack is for protection and backup. The tank bag is for speed and access. I almost never keep my main camera inside the backpack. It's safe, but it is slow. Instead, my camera lives here in the tank bag, padded using simple things like clothes or soft layers. This gives me fastest access on the road, stop, shoot, and move on. That rhythm matters when you're riding solo. For my main camera, I use one body and one versatile lens. Not multiple lenses, not backups. A wide range zoom that covers most situations is far more useful than chasing shallow depth of field. I avoid tall tripods. They are unstable in wind and risky on the roadside. A small gorilla pod or flexible tripod is lighter, safer, and faster to deploy. For first-person shots and vlogging, I use a chin-mounted action camera. Audio is just as important as video. I prefer simple, lightweight microphones that don't interfere with riding or helmet movement. Whatever you use, reliability matters more than features. For static shots and creative angles, cameras like the Insta360 work beautifully, but only when they are properly stabilized and mounted. Power is non-negotiable. High capacity power banks, fast charging cables, and a secondary phone for navigation. I never use my main phone as GPS. Constant vibration can damage camera stabilization over time. Drones are also my best friends, and I call them my floating cameramen. These are one of the greatest inventions for solo content creators like me, along with the camera. That's my entire system. No excess, no clutter. Just the tools that let me focus on the ride and the story I want to tell. Once packing is sorted, everything becomes simpler. Now let's talk about how actually this setup is used to create cinematic shots on the road with real-world examples that I've shot myself around the world. Gears are done, but how about gearing your mind for shooting? No matter how many cameras or how much equipment you carry, if you do not have the eye to recognize a movement on the road, it will simply pass you by. That awareness, knowing when to stop, when to wait, and when to pull out a camera matters far more than gear. Vlogging and cinematic shooting need very different mindsets. Vlogging is casual, the camera is always on, and you react in real time. Cinematic shooting is the opposite. It is deliberate. You slow down, you observe light, weather, movement, and mood. Let me give you an example. On my solo ride through Iceland, I used a mix of tools, action cameras, a 360 camera, drones, and my phone for quick updates, and a mirrorless camera for cinematic shots. Most of the journey was cold, wet, and unpredictable. Each tool had a purpose. The 360 camera lets you capture movements quickly and reframe them later. Drones add perspective, but you can't fly them everywhere. A lightweight, sub 250 gram drone with tracking works best for solo riders. Mirrorless cameras give you depth and texture, especially with the right lens, and create that cinematic feel that you're seeing here. Most modern cameras also pair with your phone, allowing you to quickly download selected media and share movements while you're still on the road. But the real storytelling begins once you're back home. That's when you look at everything you've captured, not as clips, but as pieces of a story. Shooting solo is about intention, not about capturing everything, but capturing what matters. In the next section, I'll break down the kinds of results you can achieve when shooting solo, from still photographs to moving shots to drone perspectives, all this using this exact approach. Now let us actually talk about taking that shot. No amount of preparation or theory can replace going out and actually taking shots. The goal is to reach a point where identifying a shot and executing it becomes second nature. The best way to explain this is through real examples. Let's start with photographs. In some ways, photos are simpler than videos, but many ways they're harder because you just have one frame to tell an entire story. This photograph was taken in Iceland. Behind me is a dormant volcano. My intention was clear. I wanted three elements in one frame: the rider, the motorcycle, and the volcano. I set the camera using a small tripod, framed the shot, and triggered it remotely. Shooting in RAW gives you flexibility later, but the real work is done before you press the shutter. Composition, balance, and intent. Now let's move on to videos. This location was perfect for a drone shot. Far from cities, low wind, and a massive scale. A drone allows you to establish the place first to show how small you are in the landscape before moving to tighter ground level shots using your main camera. I also capture a lot of B-roll, grass in the foreground, textures out of focus, small movements to add that atmosphere. The more of these you collect, the more freedom you have in the edit. When it comes to narration, you have choices. You can speak directly into an action camera on location. You can use a wireless mic and talk to the camera. Or, and this is often the safest option, you can record a voiceover later, especially when you don't yet know anything about the place or the story that you want to tell. I usually combine both, short pieces to camera on location and deeper reflection later in voiceovers. To stay connected with my audience, I also capture quick vertical stories and post them whenever I have network. When shooting, it helps to be clear whether your output is going to be vertical, horizontal, or both. Sometimes you'll forget, but that's fine. In the edit, you can still work creatively by splitting frames or layering movements from the same place. What matters most is not perfection, but intent. In the next section, we'll look at a few advanced techniques that will help elevate these shots even further. At this point, you already understand intent, composition, and storytelling. Now let's talk about advanced techniques. Not to complicate things, but to expand what's possible when you're shooting solo. Let's start with a 360 camera. A 360 camera can completely change the way your footage feels if it is used correctly. The biggest mistake people make is placing the camera too close to the bike. That creates distortion. What you actually want is just enough distance between the bike and the camera so that the bike looks natural and the camera feels like it's floating. The challenge is stability. The longer the stick, the more vibration you introduce, and the higher the risk of failure. That's why mounting matters more than the camera itself. A combination of clamps, suction cups, and secondary support like zip ties dramatically reduce shake and load on a single mount. This shot here uses a suction cup on the windscreen. It creates a rolling shot feel, almost like there's a chase vehicle. And this one is side mounted, giving a completely different sense of motion. And this rear mounted shot adds depth to the scale of the road behind. Handheld 360 shots while riding are possible with bikes that have DCT or quick shifters, but I don't recommend them. The risk far outweighs the reward. Next, drones. When you're riding solo, think of the drone as a virtual cameraman. Sub 250 gram foldable drones are the most practical options. Easy to deploy, fewer restrictions, and fast to pack away. More advanced foldable drones with optical zoom allow you to create controlled pans that feel intentional, like this shot for my USA ride, where it looks like a cameraman is tracking the bike. Drones are also excellent for self-portraits, but they demand practice. Avoid high winds, flying over water, or sensitive airspace. Motorcycle tracking is still improving. It's not as reliable as car tracking yet, so simple, predictable movements work best. Now let's talk about the phone. Your phone is not just a backup, it is your primary tool, especially for stories, quick updates, and spontaneous movements. But with today's phone cameras, it can also deliver some serious results. Keep three things ready: a small tripod or a flex pod, a wireless mic, and enough battery. Place the phone on rocks, poles, or natural structures and let the scene play out. If your phone supports RAW or log profiles, use them. But remember, composition matters more than the settings. Shots like these from Africa were taken on a phone because the movement, framing, and timing were right. Portrait modes can add foreground separation, but they only work if composition is already strong. Advanced techniques don't mean complicated techniques. They mean using the right tool in the right way, in the right movement, without breaking the rhythm of the ride. On a journey, you don't wait for the ideal conditions. And that presence of mind is what separates experienced solo creators from everyone else. Once the ride is done and footage is captured, this is where everything comes together. Good footage needs editing. Editing doesn't create the story, but it decides how clearly the story is felt. Shooting is where you gather material. Editing is where you make sense of it. In this masterclass, I've deliberately focused on shooting impromptu, responding to what's in front of you rather than working from fixed script. That said, even a loose structure in your head can significantly improve storytelling in the edit. You can edit almost anywhere today. Phones are powerful enough for quick edits on the go, both for photos and short videos. Laptops and desktops give you more control when you're building longer cinematic pieces. The tools matter far less than how you use them. For photographs, the goal is not heavy manipulation, but balance, light, contrast, color, and mood. For video, storytelling is driven by structure and rhythm. One simple rule that helps: avoid holding the same scene for more than 3 to 4 seconds unless there is a clear reason to stay. In today's fast-paced world, the first 10 to 15 seconds of a long format video are critical for retention. Those hooks, strong openings, striking movements, emotions eventually evolve into short vertical reels for viewers on the move. Editing techniques like J-cuts help scene flow more naturally, letting sound lead visuals instead of everything cutting abruptly. Consistency is important. Try to keep your frame rate uniform across devices wherever possible. 24 frames per second give a cinematic feel. 30 frames per second works well for mobile and online viewing. Neutral intensity filters can help you control light while shooting, allowing smoother motion and richer tones in your footage. New tools like generative AI can assist in the process, but they should support your vision, not replace it. In the end, editing is not about saving bad footage. It's about revealing the intent behind the footage that you chose to shoot. When shooting and editing work together, the story feels effortless, even when the journey wasn't. This is not the only way to create motorcycle content. It's simply the way that has worked for me repeatedly across countries, cultures, and conditions. It's impossible to cover every aspect of content creation in a single masterclass. The real learning happens on the road over time, when decisions start becoming instinctive rather than deliberate. That intuition is a gift, and it is one that keeps giving. The aim of this masterclass was not to give you rules, but to unlock your creative side and help you see rides differently. If this helps you level up your content even one notch, then it has done its job. Use what you've learned here to tell better stories, to enjoy the process more. And if you choose to take a serious shot at becoming the Eurogrip Creator Circuit champion this year. Because once you experience what it feels like to create cinematic, meaningful content that truly represents your journey, there is no going back.